Welcome to Urban Spidey Tonight, the show where I talk about my feelings on the toy community and possibly other topics. Tonight's topic is one of those unrelated to the action figure community. My last two videos have been very much action figure community oriented, but this episode is going to be different. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about something that I rediscovered my love for, Bakugan. I kind of want to make a dedicated video on Bakugan, but if I do that, it would just mostly be me showing off my collection and talking about the Bakugan that I have. So, I mean, if that's something you'd be interested in seeing, make sure to let me know in the comments. Anyways, Bakugan was a tabletop card game inspired by the games like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh!, but also inspired by marbles, weirdly enough. Yeah, that's right, the thing from Squid Game. Bakugan are little plastic balls that have a magnet inside them so that when you roll them onto a metal card, they open. That's it. That's really the major difference between Bakugan and any other card game of this style. The original Bakugan line was very much focused on selling toys. The game was kind of an afterthought. It was lackluster. It wasn't anything too special. But it wasn't a terrible game. But the actual Bakugan themselves are what made the game fun. Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't have an actual physical representation of the monster in-game. But Bakugan had you actually roll these little balls and they'd pop open. I mean, that was most of the fun, if I'm being honest. There was never really any strategy to the game or anything. However, I've heard that the recent reboot of the game is much more strategy-based, which is good to hear, but I most likely won't get into it. I've never really been a big card game guy, so while, yeah, I did have Pokemon cards and especially Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, I never really played them. I just liked them because the other kids liked them. But Bakugan, I was super into Bakugan because I really didn't need to know anything about what the cards did. I mean, obviously there was some power. Later on, they introduced specific power-ups from cards and all that. But a lot of the original cards just didn't have any description or whatever. It just had a bunch of numbers that you would add on to the number that was on your Bakugan, and boom, that was your power level, and whoever had the higher power level won. It was that simple. There's another factor that got me so heavily into Bakugan. Bakugan also had an animated show that never really took off in Japan, but in the US, it was a massive hit because we're little consumers over here. Which meant the toys were popping off in the US. And I was the perfect age to be sucked into this line of toys. I also remember waking up before school to watch rerun episodes of Bakugan, because I was getting ready to go play Bakugan during recess. And I mean, not to brag or anything, but I used to destroy those nerds at Bakugan. But I have such fond memories of Bakugan. Whether it's my grandma getting me Maxis Dragonoid, or playing the actual game with my school friends, watching the show, etc., etc. I used to watch that show so much that when I went back to watch the show for this video, which, by the way, literally every single episode is available on YouTube, just in case you were interested, I could remember the episodes almost beat for beat. I have so much nostalgia for Bakugan. And I think the fact that I haven't really seen many people talk about it in years is what made me get back into it. Very similar to how I got back into Bionicle, which, if you've been a subscriber for a while, you probably saw my Do You Remember Bionicle video, which is probably very similar to the kind of video I would do for Bakugan. if that is something people would be interested in. And getting back into Bakugan was crazy. I had to relearn all of the names of the Bakugan, some of which I remembered because they were so, I was gonna say iconic, but they're just simple names like Dragonoid, or Hydronoid, or Manion? Anyways, I also had to relearn all of the patterns on the balls because I had to start buying more. Because I was watching the show, it made me want to get the actual Bakugan. And it's strange because there are so many different variations of Bakugan. Because not each actual Bakugan is specific to any attribute. Like there's Fire Dragonoid, right? That's like the one everyone knows. And obviously a dragon would be fire-based, right? But you could also have a Ventus Dragonoid, which is wind, or a Subterra Dragonoid, which is earth. So it makes you think, do you really want to try and collect all of them? Which I do not want to try and collect every single one, because that would be absurd. But also, it makes you look at which color schemes you like the most, which is something I find really unique about Bakugan. All of the other card games around that time, they didn't have that sort of uniqueness, that sense of this is the color that I like, and so I can use it. It's like Blue Eyes White Dragon, or actually that's a bad example. How about Pikachu? Again, this is something I don't really know that much about. I used to have Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but I just don't really remember much about them because I never played with them. Anyways, if you loved Pikachu, but you really, really like fire, you're a little pyrotechnic and you really like fire, you can't do that because it's a lightning type Pokemon or whatever. But with Bakugan, you could have a Dragonoid in whichever element or attribute you want, which, again, like I said earlier, it adds a sort of uniqueness to it. But as of now, I am most of the way through collecting all of the Season 1 Bakugan. And there are a lot of Bakugan that just never got made, or Bakugan that I'm sure I will never own because they're ridiculously priced now. But even then, I'll be satisfied with just being able to have most of the cast that appears in the show for the majority of the show. And while I do think it is very good that Bakugan's game has been more, it's been updated to be more strategy based, I personally will not get into it just because card games like that aren't my thing. I just like toys that are cool. And if the toys are cool enough, it gets me into whatever deeper parts of that franchise that there are. And personally, I don't really... I think I'm just blinded by nostalgia because I don't really like the newer looks of Bakugan. But the older Bakugan, which objectively are more clunkier and just less refined compared to the reboot, I just like them more. I don't know why. It's nostalgia, I'm pretty sure. However, I'm not opposed to anyone that wants to try and convince me to get into the reboot, because some of the Bakugan look really cool, and they do like flips and stuff. That's so cool. Anyways, it's so strange how much Bakugan has actually affected my life. Technically speaking, it was the first anime that I followed from beginning to end, which led me down the path of discovering how great of a tool anime is for storytelling. I never really watched Dragon Ball or Naruto. I mean, even Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon weren't shows that I was really into, but somehow Bakugan hooked me, and if not for that, I probably wouldn't be as open to anime as I am now. So yeah, those stupid little plastic balls have affected my life and the person I am, and the way I consume media, which is kind of weird and strange to think about, but I mean, it's true. Now, I wanted to end this video with a clip that would have been one of my very first attempts at a YouTube video of me reviewing a Bakugan scorpion trap. But I don't think I'll ever see that footage again. It was recorded all the way back in 2009, and it was hilarious because as I'm talking about the Bakugan, I sneeze and a massive glob of snot comes out of my nose, which was very embarrassing for me at the time, but looking back, it's pretty funny. I mean, like, come on. Also, the fact that it was the early beginnings of me trying to make video reviews. It's funny to think that I've been at this for half my life now. Anyways, with all that being said, I'm probably gonna make that longer, dedicated video to going deeper into Bakugan and my actual physical collection. I've kind of convinced myself through recording this. So stay tuned for that.